These crime figure story was so notorious, Hollywood decided to make a movie about him. Number 1, Paid in Full. This movie is based off A.Z. Faison, Rich Porter, and Alpo Martinez, who were all drug kingpins in New York during the 1980s. Number 2, Alpha Dog. This movie is based off the life of Jesse James Hollywood, who was a Los Angeles drug dealer who kidnapped and murdered 17-year-old Nicholas Markowitz because Nicholas' brother Ben Markowitz decided to trash his house over a $1,300 debt he owed to him. Number 3, The Iceman. This movie is based off the life of notorious hitman Richard Klaczynski, who committed multiple murders during 1980 to 1984 for the mob. During that time span from 1980 to 1984, the feds believe his body count could be high as 20. And it is said he earned the nickname the Iceman because after he killed some of his victims, he would place their body in a freezer so authorities couldn't estimate the victim's time of death. Number 4, In Too Deep. This movie is based off the life of Boston drug kingpin Durrell God Whiting, who was the biggest drug kingpin in Boston during the 1980s. Number 5, American Gangster. This movie is based off the life of New York drug kingpin Frank Lucas, who was a heroin drug kingpin during the 1960s and the 1970s in New York. Frank is also widely known as the first black drug kingpin who was able to cut out the middleman, who was the Italian mafia, and buy his heroin directly from a supplier in the notorious drug trafficking area of Southeast Asia called the Golden Triangle. Number 6, Kill the Messenger. This movie is based off the life of Gary Webb, who was an investigative journalist who became known as the man that exposed the U.S. government in his newspaper series called The Dark Alliance. In his newspaper series called The Dark Alliance, Gary claimed the United States government was involved in trafficking cocaine into the United States to help fund the war in Nicaragua by providing weapons to a rebel group called the Contras. Gary also claimed in his Dark Alliance newspaper series, the rebel group the Contras may have acted with the knowledge and the protection of the CIA. Number 7, 100 Kilos. This movie is based off the life of Los Angeles crack cocaine drug kingpin Rick Ross. In accordance to Gary Webb, Rick Ross was the man who was being provided with the cocaine that was used to fund the war in Nicaragua. Number 8, The Departed and The Black Mass. These movies are based off the life of ex-Boston gang leader James Whitey Bulger, who was the leader of an ex-Boston gang known as the Winter Hill Gang. He is also known as the man who snitched on the Italian mafia in Boston so he could rise into power in the Boston underworld. Number 9, White Boy Rick. This movie is based off the life of teenage FBI informant Richard White Boy Rick Wershey Jr. White Boy Rick is known as the youngest FBI informant in American history. It is said he started working as an FBI informant at the age of 14 in Detroit, Michigan. Number 10, Monster. This movie is based off the life of serial killer Eileen Wuornos. She was the serial killer who killed and robbed 7 of her clients during her time working as a street prostitute. Number 11, Blow. This movie is based off the life of American drug smuggler George Wong, who was the man who taught Colombian drug lords Pablo Escobar and Carlos Later how to smuggle cocaine into the United States during the 1970s and the early 1980s.